Why do they have to have one odd one out in every set? Like, for part 2, Mari had the bigger base. Now for part 1, Kaworu has the bigger base. Seriously, can't they just keep the base the same size? How am I gonna put you on the shelf now? Hi everyone, welcome back. Today I've got a bunch of figures to open and it's quite a number of them. They are taking up my screen space. Here, I have the 1/7 scale figures of the Radioeva Part 1 series by Hobbymax. This series features the Evangelion characters in very fashionable streetwear. Back then, this bunch of figures was super popular. I think they kinda started a trend for streetwear figures, and based on these illustrations, you can see why it went so viral. However, this set has been re-released, and Hobbymax has been churning out many more versions of this Radioeva set. So, sadly, they have been in the aftermarket. However, I already have the entire set, but I'm still thinking whether I should keep this set since I already have the Part 2 version. I kind of feel Part 2 is better, but Part 1 looks really good as well. Anyway, enough of me rambling. Without further ado, let's open this up. The first thing that catches my eye for this set of figures is the box design. They are all so compact and minimalist. Despite how similar they look, they have graphics and patterns unique to each of the character, and the patterns matches the designs of the figure outfits. The most unique feature is that this box opens up by pulling out the inner box, like a fancy shoebox. Sure, I feel that the little ribbon may break if too much force is used, but it's a really nice idea. As for the figures, starting off with Mari, I got her from Ami for about 98 USD. This girl was originally released in November 2021, and her aftermarket back then was pretty high. Thankfully, she got a re-release in June 2023, and that's when I picked her up. Yeah, that second release pre-order came out together with the Part 2 Mari in 2022. But I kinda missed that. Surprisingly, when she was released, there was still a lot of stock with Ami, and even to date, Ami is still selling her. So yeah, she isn't that hard to find nowadays. Anyway, this figure only has one blister package, and inside, I first have this acrylic base. Lastly, the figure of Mari herself. And that's all for Mari. Next, let me take out Kaworu. I got Kaworu from a seller in Taobao for about 105 USD, which is more expensive than Mari. Even though it was more expensive to get this from China instead of Ami, the shipping price was the deal breaker for me. I pre-ordered the first release of this figure back in January 2022 and received him in July the same year. Just like Mari, Kaworu's box opens up by pulling the inner box out like so. Inside this box, there is also only one blister package, as well as this little note from Hobbymax. All the figures have it. Kaworu also comes with this simple set of instructions. Opening up the blister package, I first have the figure of Kaworu, followed by his acrylic grey base. And that's all the components I have for Kaworu. Moving on to Rei next. For Rei, I also got her from a seller on Taobao, and sadly she was even more expensive. That's because this Rei was the first release in March 2021. I got into this set of figures a bit late in January 2022, so had to pay for a slightly higher price. Well, that was when no one knew this figure would get a re-release, which wasn't a common practice back then. So yeah, lesson learned, don't FOMO. Because of FOMO, I bought 2 sets of the same type of figures, which was a really dumb thing to do. Anyway, taking this figure out, I first have the grey acrylic base, which is in the same design as the rest of the figures from this set. Lastly is the figure of Rei herself. And that's all the components I have for Rei. Before assembly, I'll move on to Shinji next. For Shinji, I also got him from a seller on Taobao, and thankfully he wasn't as expensive as Rei. I managed to catch the pre-order of the first release back in January 2022, and got him in August that same year. Shinji also has this fancy shoebox design. And pulling this inner box out, inside, there is only one blister package. Here is his set of simple instructions, which is just like the rest of the figures from this set. Opening up the blister package, I first have the acrylic base. Lastly is the figure of Shinji himself. And that's all the components for Shinji. Now for the last figure in this set, Asuka. I picked Asuka up from Ami for around 95 USD. So yeah, back then, getting from Japan was cheaper. But when you consider the shipping, China is still better overall for me. Anyway, I missed the first release of this Asuka back in December 2020, but thankfully she got a re-release. I'm glad I managed to get this re-release Asuka because she is pretty popular. She seems to have increased slightly in price in the aftermarket since her second release. By the way, all the aftermarket prices are based on what I found at the time I was editing this video, so it may have changed over time. Anyway, just like the rest of the figures, this figure has an acrylic base, as well as the figure of Asuka herself. And that's all the components I have for Asuka. Now, to set up all the figures from this Radioeva set. For assembly, all the Radioeva characters only has the figure and the base. So I just need to set all of them on the base. That should be easy enough. Starting off with Mari, here is her acrylic base, which has one metal pack. Under Mari's red heels, there is a hole to slot into that metal pack. For my copy, Mari slides into her pack pretty smoothly. I heard there were some issues for this, but glad that mine is okay. Moving on to Kaworu, I first have his acrylic base, which has two metal packs. Beneath his shoes, there is one hole each, and this slots into the metal packs on the base. Sadly, I need to stretch Kaworu's legs apart to force the shoes into the metal packs. It's really not a pleasant thing to do. Thankfully, nothing broke. Anyway, next up is Rei, and here is her base with only one metal pack. Under one of Rei's shoes, there is a hole which slots into the pack. She slots in extremely easily for me, which is strange because it is extremely loose. Anyway, moving on to Shinji, here is his base with two metal packs. These are for the two holes under his shoes. It was a bit of a struggle to slot him into the base, but after wiggling him in, he slots in quite snugly. Last but not least, I have Asuka, and here is her base, with only one metal pack. By the way, the bottom of her shoes are like really detailed. Like, look at that. Wow. Sadly, it was also a little bit of a struggle to slot her into the base, but after wiggling her down, she managed to fit snugly as well. With that, I have the 1/7 scale Radioeva Part 1 figures by Hobbymax fully assembled. And with these figures out of the box, I can see why they were so popular back when they were first released. The quality of these Hobbymax figures are top-notch, and I'm quite surprised that they've been in the aftermarket. I'm pretty sure that's only because of overproduction, because these are really good quality figures. The way that the characters have been captured are so accurate, and the details of the outfit is just fantastic. Looking into Mari first, her main feature is her hair. Sadly for me, the first copy of Mari I had came with broken twin tails. So I had to send this back to Amayami for a replacement, and thankfully the second copy is safe and sound. Anyway, moving down the figure, Mari's outfit also looks so dynamic despite the simple pose. Her top is black but has very detailed fabric folds. The red highlights on the shirt is also complemented with the vibrant red jacket, which also has a beautiful scalp and very nice shading. This color combination with the white jeans makes Mari look casually fashionable. As for the base, it's an acrylic grey disc which looks more premium than those typical plastic base. I really like acrylic bases. For the shoes, Mari is wearing heels which has a very simple design, so there's nothing much to say. Next, zooming in to Kaworu. I think people had critiqued the shape of his face to be too pointy. I can see his chin is pretty pointy, but not a major setback for me. I actually quite like his eyes, to be honest. He looks like Kaworu to me. Plus, his hair sculpt is quite detailed with really nice shading. Moving down the figure, I really like Kaworu's sweater. The prints of the graphics are really clean and detailed. I especially love the white symbols on his sleeves. Sadly, I feel this black clothing has a lack of shading. Although there are fabric folds sculpted, I feel it's a missed opportunity considering how well Mari's jacket was shaded. Moving down the figure, many also critiqued that this figure was too pale in comparison to the original promo picture. And the issue was his track pants. It is indeed less saturated, and I agree that it would have been better if it was a lot more vibrant in color. But my biggest issue with this figure is the size of his base. He forces himself to be at the center of the shelf cause his base is bigger than the rest of this set. I get that it's because of his pose, but I'm just really annoyed by this. Moving on, Next is Rei, and even though she seems to be one of the more popular ones from this set, I still feel Mari is my favorite. Rei has a very accurate face and a nicely shaded hair, plus her beret is so fashionable. However, I feel that the angle of her face requires you to display her at a higher position. She is looking downwards, so you can't see her face if she is on a lower shelf, which is the case for me, unfortunately. Also, she has to be tilted to a side to see her face better. This means I also can't see the nice patterns on her jacket as well. But that's just me nitpicking. Speaking of the jacket, I really love it. The grey is really nicely shaded. However, my issue is the seam lines on the sleeves. Once I saw it, I could not unsee it. Anyway, just like her baggy jacket, her baggy straight pants also look so fashionable. Even though it's in a dark grey colour, there is quite a bit of shading on it as well. Seriously, Kaworu's black jacket could have shading too. It would have made him look so much better. For Rei, I also have a problem with her shoes. I do find the design really classic and the sculpt really detailed, but it seems that my copy is very loosely slotted into the peg. Basically, if I hold this figure wrongly, the acrylic base will just slide off and crash with the floor. So it's a nightmare if it breaks. Something I unfortunately have to be wary about forever. On to the next figure, Shinji. His face looks accurate, so that's kinda okay for me. As for his hair, by default the design is simple. And even if the colour is dark brown, the shading is quite nicely done. My only issue with the hair is how obvious the seam line looks cause of this very simple hair sculpt. As for his outfit, just like Kaworu, he has a black jacket with no shading at all. And the seam line on the sleeves are pretty obvious. Actually, I think this is kinda the case for all the Radioeva Part 1 figures. Oh wells. Regardless, I quite like the colour of the logo on his sweater. It's such a vibrant green colour. Moving down, his brown baggy pants are the main highlight of this figure for me. The pleats are really nicely sculpted, plus the belt adds a very interesting detail to his attire. I quite like how it's sculpted, and this pop of green adds a visual interest to this figure. As for his shoes, although I love this type of vibrant blue colour, I find the colour combinations off. I would have imagined his shoes to be green to match the belt and sweater, but I suppose this colour combo is what the designer was going for. Okay, finally the last figure in this set, I have Asuka. And unfortunately for me, I feel her face looks a bit off, especially when looked at from the side. It's like her eyes are too wide apart, but I guess that's the issue with translating 2D to 3D. As for her hair, I love the vibrant orange. The sculpt is also very beautiful. However, I feel that there should be more shading to add more depth to her voluminous hair. As for the outfit, the navy green jacket is very cool with a lot of details. Like, compared to the rest of the characters, I think Asuka has the most detailed jacket. The ribs pattern along the edge of the jacket is a really nice texture, and the shading is quite nicely done. Moving down the figure, and unlike the rest of the gang, Asuka shows off more of her legs. I kinda wish she had higher socks just to have more details. But her shoes, it's the best. Her sports shoes is so detailed, especially the sole below. It looks like the real deal. All in all, I really love this set of the Radioeva Part 1 series of figures. Even though the seam line of the clothes are kinda annoying, the rest of the sculpt is perfect, and the colours and shading are just so attractive. Plus, all these figures are posed so photogenically, if that's even a word. But the point is, they will look really good on anyone's shelf. I've also got the Part 2 Radioeva series characters, and I kind of feel that Part 2 looks way better. Plus, it's a collaboration with FILA, one of my favorite fashion brands. So even though I really love this Part 1 set, I feel that Part 2 is way better. Regardless, having seen both Part 1 and Part 2 in person, I am leaning towards just keeping both sets. It's not like I can sell these guys for a good price, so I might as well keep them on the shelf since they do look quite fabulous. Now I have to figure out how to fit both sets on the shelf. Seriously, Kaworu, why is your base so big? Annoying. And that's all for today's video. It was a lot to go through, but I'm glad I finally got these Radioeva figures out of the box. Let me know in the comments what you think. To be honest, if you can get some of these at the bin aftermarket price, It's really worth it. Anyway, if you enjoyed what you saw, do leave a like and subscribe with notifications to stay tuned to more videos. Until then, I'll see you next time. Bye bye!